Welcome to the Elle Bee Show. I'm your host, Elle Bee. So, most of the things that you're about to hear are my opinion. But guess what? We sprinkled in some facts because we're what? Educated bees over here in this hive. Don't forget to check out the website for our resources so you can do some additional research on your own. Now, prepare to be stung, but the solve is not included. Let's jump in. So for today's episode, we're talking about a highly sensitive topic for a lot of people, colorism in our families. So first we're going to start with the historical aspect of it, and then next week I'm going to talk about my family. So I know y'all like, why does she keep talking about enslavement? Because that's where it comes from. You know, we all know the stories of those that were the house Negro versus the field Negro, where we did that comparison in episode 2. And I want to dive in deeper of how that came to be. It was really through rape. That's how it was. When, you know, the women, black women, were forced by white men to be their bed warmers, to bear their children, and not get anything in return. There was no love, there was no affection, there was none of that. There was, my wife doesn't want to do it. I'm a man, I have these urges, I own you, so I can make you do what I want you to do. And at the end of the day, that's where all of these biracial, mixed race, half-breeds, mulattoes, octoroons, quadroons, that's where they all came from. Everybody that I know, every black person that I know has people in their family of all different hues, from super light to extra dark. My family is not excluded from this. I mean, look at me. I'm very milk chocolatey. But in my ancestry, I know that there is some Native American, Choctaw to be specific, and Irish. So I'm going to talk more about that next episode. But when it comes to families and being mixed race, there are so many things, negative connotations that have plagued generations since enslavement ended. You have the brown paper bag test, which was a very real thing amongst black people, that helped to keep us separate within our own communities. My stepmother, well, one of my former stepmothers, my dad's been married a few times, another story for another day. She is a very fair, light-skinned black woman. She went to an HBCU and she tried to join a sorority. I'm not going to say which one, but when I tell you what happened to her, you'll probably be able to figure it out. She was told that she was not light enough because she was darker than a brown paper bag. Now, if you met this woman and you look at her and you be like, what brown paper bag is she darker than? Because she is very light, very fair, she has freckles, she's very tall, she's very slender, and she has very fine hair. So it's just like, what are we missing here? She fit their mold, their stereotype, but was told, no, you're not light enough, you can't be a part of us. That's not right. That was not fair to her. It crushed her dreams because she wanted to be a member of this organization. They just flat out, this was disrespectful. But all of this comes from being taught that you were better than because you were maybe in the house as opposed to somebody else that was working in the field. See, the house Negroes, they had it not easier, don't get me wrong, because they still had it rough. But they had slightly better treatment than those that were working in the fields. They were not in the sun all day long. They were not doing all of the extraneous back-breaking work. that the field Negroes were doing. They were the cooks and the maids, and they took care of the children. So those that were in the house typically were of lighter skin. But the lighter skin didn't always come right away. Sometimes it took 2 or 3 tries to get that light-skinned baby, to have that light-skinned slave. And that, in and of itself, is a complete mindfuck. Because for me, as a Black woman, I have dealt with many things that I should have never had to deal with simply because of the color of my skin. It's brown, milk chocolatey. Now it's tattooed, very, very much so, like everywhere. But that's not the point. So when you look at colorism and you think, well, how does this play over time? Well, over time, there has been a continuing of mixing of the races, and trickle down to where you have those that are extremely light that look like they could pass. Now, I'm currently reading this book called 400 Souls, which is the story of America from the perspective of Black people that starts from 1692 that goes through 1619 that goes through 2019. Recently, one of the things that I read was a story of Mr. Lattimore. Mr. Lattimore was half white and half Black, but he could pass. The fact that he could pass helped him to be able to run away with his pregnant wife at the time. He wrote his own passes because he also knew how to read and he knew how to write. Well, with him running away from Virginia to Baltimore and then eventually going up to to Philadelphia and then eventually leaving to go to Canada, he was able to go on that path, on that journey, because he looked like he could be a white man. Because people thought he was a white man, they thought his wife was his slave, not that she was his wife. So he was able to run away, take his wife, who was pregnant with their child at the time, and make it to freedom, all the while passing as somebody that he was not. But the caveat here is that while he was in the process of doing this, his owner realized that he ran away, as well as his wife, and put out a bounty for them to come home because that was his property. Now, there were several abolitionists who aided in him running away while he was on his journey that could have turned him in, but they did not because they believed that slavery was wrong. So he is one of the stories, one of, I'm sure, millions of stories that took place during that time period. Now, when it comes to current time, you have these sayings that you hear often. It was just like, well, if somebody speaks proper English, you're trying to be white. Or if someone chooses to get an education or further their education, you're trying to be white. Oh, you think you're so smart because you went to college? Not that I think that I'm smart. I know I'm smart. Yes, I'm partly smart because I went to college. Yes, college does make you smarter if you pay attention and you get good grades. You will become smarter. Also, if you pick up a book and read it, you also become smarter because guess what's in books? Knowledge. You learn things when you read. I highly encourage you to do so. But it's always been this complex thing where we're going to keep you separated, not we as in Black people, but others trying to keep us separate and saying, well, light is better, dark is worse. That's not the case at all. So you have to think like, look at the standards of beauty. The standards of beauty in America are very European-centric. Big lips, a big nose, curves, all of that are natural for a lot of Black people are things that white people pay for. You want to be us so bad, but you hate us, which, like, in my mind, it doesn't make any sense. I'll give you an example, and it's no love lost here because, I think their whole family is pretty much garbage, but take the Kardashians. You are famous for what? Exactly. Having a sex tape? Because if you look at Kim Kardashian, before she had all of her plastic surgery, and you look at her now, she looks like a plain Jane white girl at a time. So after the plastic surgery, where she got these big ass titties, got all these, injections in her booty, lip injections. She lives in a tanning salon, because if you see her beforehand, she looks pale and pasty, like most white people do. If they don't tan, they kind of look sickly. So you get mad at our natural melanin, and then you go to the doctor to try and get what we got for free. But yet and still, y'all don't like us. Back in the 70s, Bo Derek was in this movie, and she had cornrows, and it was like, oh my God, look at her hair. It's so fascinating. It's exotic. It's different. What is this? It's black, is what it is. They're called cornrows, not plaits. That came from the enslaved who used to braid their hair, put rice in their hair, so they would have food on their journey to freedom. Because we never wanted to be here in the first place. You captured us and brought us here to do your labor for free because you were lazy. Period. Okay. So, don't get me wrong, because, all white people are not bad. There were several abolitionists back in those times that helped. There are several allies today. But the majority of y'all have no clue, no idea, no inclination, or care not about the contributions that we have made to society to make you better. I mean, y'all probably would have figured out eventually, but the first heart transplant, we did that. Traffic lights, that was us. Peanut butter, us. That was us. So just because some people are melanated deficient doesn't mean that you can't just be your natural self. Like, I get it, you're fascinated by us. We're fascinated by us too, which just makes everything that much better. But it doesn't mean that you basically copy our style, take everything that we do when we do it, and say that it's ghetto or that it's terrible or bad or wrong or anything like that. But when you do it, it's great, it's wonderful, it's super, it's new, it's fresh, it's fascinating. That's not how this works. Our creativity, our originality comes from pain, comes from drama, trauma, comes from us wanting to have better for ourselves, for our future generations, for our children. Copycats are copycats, not original. Like, we let you in to our spaces with open arms, welcoming you all. And that is not reciprocated. Going all the way back to the first episode when we talked about Beyonce and country music. That's our country music is ours. It's not yours, it's ours. So when you look at colorism in families, because there is so much division, because it's been passed down from generation to generation to generation, we have to do more to break these generational curses. I have people in my family that are all shades. Everybody has people in their family that are all shades. People that are not melanated have pretty much one shade, but they have 50 foundations while we get 2. What's up with that? Like, it wasn't until recently when Rihanna dropped Fenty Beauty that there were even accurate shades for makeup for us. When we've been around for ever, since actually before 1619, because the first black people were here in the 1500s. I read it in a book, so there's that. And we don't get acknowledged for that. But you do all these things to make yourself appear to look more like us, instead of just being happy the way that God made you. So, at some point in time, bleaching was a very popular thing amongst black people because they wanted to be lighter because that was considered better. Closer to white you are, the better you are. That's not real. That's not reality. That's not right. I am perfectly happy with my milk chocolatey self because that's the way God made me. But I am also equal to the way that He made everybody else. Just because your skin is lighter doesn't mean that you're better. Just because people in your family are lighter than you doesn't make them better. It just makes them lighter because they still go through the same things that you go through, just in a different capacity. And I'm definitely going to talk about more of that in the next episode because my family, I have stories of things that have happened in my family. And we're a rainbow tribe of blackness. So, mixing up the races, thinking somebody is better than, all of those things. Throw all of that out. Get away with it. Shoot. Goodbye. Be gone. Because we're not going to keep dealing with this colorism thing, especially amongst each other, moving forward. When we still have so many things that we have to face dealing with other people that are not black. Because the way that we are portrayed is that, we're criminals, we're ghetto, we're uneducated, we're thieves, we don't take care of our children, all our men go to prison, we're on welfare. And while some of those things may be true for some people, that's not the majority of us. It's just not. So, let's get on to the healing part within our families. If you beefed out with your cousin because your cousin is a light bright, and you called them high yellow and they got mad at you, go apologize. If you beefing with your auntie because your auntie is chocolatey, like dark chocolate, and you call her black as tar, go apologize. Stop being so disrespectful. What's wrong with you? So, our food for the thought for this week is that the trauma that was forced upon us, forced upon our ancestors, doesn't have to carry into our present. You can be better than the past. I encourage you to be better than the past, because at the end of the day, we have us moving forward. Because the way this world is going right now, we can only depend on us. So come back next week because we got more to talk about. Thanks for tuning in to the Elle Bee Show. Make sure you share, subscribe, and sound off. I hope you got some. Who knew it could feel so good?